on the subject of the Labour Party abandoning the principles that I believe in, a lot of people on this channel will know that I'm not voting for the Labour Party at the next general election. I have said that I probably will vote for them in local elections. I like my councillors. The general election is different from local elections, but I will not be voting for Labour at the next general election. I'll be voting for the Green Party. There's a lot of pushback I get to this, so what I'm going to do is answer a lot of the things that people will accuse me of or say in response to when I say that I'm not voting for the Labour Party. To lay out my reasons for why I will not support the Labour Party in its current form. First of all, is that it's completely abandoned its ideological base. The history of the Labour Party is that it is an alliance of convenience between social democrats, historically, social democrats and democratic socialists. As a democratic socialist myself, I'm very happy to ally with social democrats who put forward social democratic policy because I believe that it is preferable to neoliberalism, right? That's how it's always been with it. Social democrats like Neil Kinnock, democratic socialists like Michael Foot or Jeremy Corbyn, for example, they've always been in the same party, coexisting for a shared political goal of making life better for the working class and representing the union movement in government. That's why they have affiliated trade unions, okay? Over the last 2.5 years, since Keir Starmer has become the leader of the Labour Party, that legacy has died, right? Not only has it died ideologically, it's died factionally as well. Trade union officials, people who believe in democratic socialism, people who support Clause 4, all of that kind of stuff, who come out of basic workers' movements in this country, are being kicked out of the party ideologically. They're being removed from standing as MPs to essentially protect and coddle a right-wing, reactionary neoliberal wing of the party that lied to gain control in the form of Keir Starmer's leadership election. And what we've got is now an ideologically right-wing party from the leadership from the top down. They ignore the party conference, they kick out members. As I said on stream before, there's literally a pamphlet going around to rich billionaires written by Alistair Campbell, architect of the dodgy dossier that led to the Iraq War, saying that they will happily let billionaires dictate their own party policy at the expense of the internal membership voting on policy at conference, right? They're not a party that represents the working class. They're not a party that represents the interests of the party members, and they are not a party that represents my political ideology. There are three main areas of policy that I view as important. That's foreign policy, that is economic policy, and that is social policy, right? And they disagree with me on all of these things. On social policy, I believe in things like trans inclusion. They've abandoned that. I believe in dealing with things such as racism, which they clearly do not want to deal with, at least on an internal party scale, and are happy to lead into racist narratives about asylum seekers that we've seen from Suella Braverman and people like that. They've stopped the small boats and stopped the boats. It's identical policy, which Stephen Flynn in Westminster pointed out very well today. He pointed out that, it's just blue Tories and red Tories, which is fundamentally an analysis that I would agree with on things like social policy. When you look at economic policy, right, are they pushing back on the monetarist view of the economy, where we cannot have any increase in the national debt because this is somehow going to be inflationary, right? That monetarist view of inflation being tied to the money supply, for example. What about the ways in which that they talk about not getting out the big checkbook, having a iron grip on the nation's finances, only ever talking about the government's budget as if it's like a household budget when it really, really isn't? Are we seeing the same kind of bold economic proposals from the Labour Party around nationalisation of rail, mail, water, energy? They've abandoned all of this despite Keir Starmer running on this to be leader of the Labour Party. He has abandoned all of those principles in favour of continual public-private partnerships, taking public money, putting it into the private sector, maintaining private supremacy over our economy rather than delivering for working people through the emboldening of worker-led organisations such as cooperatives or the Inclusive Ownership Fund. Those have all been put by the wayside. So we have a monetarist policy that is fundamentally neoliberal, that cedes the ideological ground to conservative rhetoric on how the economy functions, which is pushing back not only policy on these issues, but our national conversation on these issues back to where it was during the new Labour period, in which all of the economic problems that started, that we see right now, from not just the Thatcherism, but the Blatcherism that was followed by New Labour over this period, right? This is an ideological battle that needs to be fought. It needs to be fought now. We need to have a social democratic economy and not a neoliberal economy, and Labour are not giving us that. Right? They're not giving us that on anything. Even in the wake of water companies dumping sewage into our rivers, Angela Rayner and all of the remainder of the front bench have continually said that they're not going to be nationalising the water companies. We're going to be spending public money, again, to subsidise the private sector, to fix the problems caused by the private sector with regards to water delivery in this country, right? And they will continue being able to pump sewage into our rivers, to give huge amounts of money away to shareholders, at the expense of the public money that's being poured in to be able to pay for this stuff. And it's not a solution, and it is fundamentally a neoliberal solution, and it will not work, right? There are some good policies that we're getting from the Labour Party, but there are some good policies that we're getting. We're getting policies like the move towards net zero with the green industrial revolution that they're talking about. Not a Green New Deal, mind you, not any kind of New Deal style economy, but there's been some green policies. But even then, GB Energy is just going to be a slush fund to put even more public money into the private sector for delivery of this stuff. It's not a publicly owned energy company like the Labour Party will try and hoodwink you into thinking that it is. This isn't properly left-wing economic policy that we're getting from this party whatsoever. And then if you move on to the third sector, which is foreign policy, which I fundamentally disagree with a large amount of the time with the Labour Party on. I agree with them on, for example, like arming Ukraine. I agree with them on that. But outside of that, we have a Labour Party that is beholden to the interests of the fascist state of Israel as it is at the moment, with supporting them in their apartheid genocidal action against the Palestinian people, right? We have them refuse to properly call out arms sales to Saudi Arabia, which they use to commit war crimes in Yemen, for example. We continually see them wanting to support American geopolitical hegemony. And when's the last time you heard Keir Starmer ever talk about support for the Syrian Democratic Forces? Like we'd seen from Jeremy Corbyn supporting Kurdistan, right? Wanting to stand up to Erdogan in his desire to punish the Kurdish minority in Turkey. Nothing. We don't hear any of that. So fundamentally, they support Western-based imperialist power. And something again I fundamentally disagree with. And you can't get me to agree with that. So on every single area of policy that I find to be important, the Labour Party disagrees with me, right? Even then, you could theoretically tempt me by saying, no justice. We live in a first past the post system. If you do not vote for the Labour Party, there'll be someone else who wins your constituency. First of all, tough shit. Tough shit. If you don't want to give me anything that I want to vote for, that's your fault, right? That's the Labour Party's fault for not giving me anything that I want to vote for, or anything that I support. If there's even just one section of policy that I had some ideological agreement with the Labour Party on, I could theoretically be convinced to give them my vote. Even off the back of disenfranchising me, telling me they don't even want me to vote for them, telling me the door is open that I can leave because I believe in the Palestinian right of return, for example. Or I don't believe in, fundamentally belief in the belief in an ethno-state on the Levant, for example, right? They want me out of their party, right? They've told me they don't want to vote for me. They have fundamentally said that everything I believe in is incorrect as far as democratic socialism as an economic prescription is concerned. They've told me as a trans person they refuse to protect my own rights by ceding to the government's rhetoric on the gender reform bill. Why would I vote for them when they've explicitly told me, and everyone that believes in the same things that I do, that they are not welcome in the party? Despite the fact that I'm part of an affiliated trade union. I'm part of the CWU, which is affiliated to the Labour Party. And it just shows how the current Labour Party does not want to stand with unions, does not want to stand with striking doctors, does not want to stand with striking rail workers. In fact, sacking people on the front bench for standing with striking rail workers, for example. And whilst the union I'm a part of, the CWU, was in a dispute with a very high-profile dispute with Royal Mail, no less, at the party conference, they were giving Royal Mail position to have a stand at the party conference, while an affiliated union, no less, was in a dispute with that employer. That's a fundamental betrayal of the movement that they say that they are there to support. And not only that, I believe that the Labour Party winning a huge majority at the election would push back left-wing politics as well. It would fundamentally mean that the belief in all of these ideological principles that I fundamentally disagree with on the left, these are fundamentally things which will be frozen into the public conversation around neoliberal economics, for example, imperialist foreign policy, reactionary social policy. They'll be frozen into the public consciousness. The actual economic decline of our country will not be arrested. That momentum will be slowed, right? Labour will be better than the Conservatives on our failing economy. They won't fix the issue. They won't fix the rot. They won't fix inequality by instituting a wealth tax, for example. Or the only tax they say they're going to be doing is the non-dom status. rather than actually fundamentally restructuring our tax system to tax capital gains, to tax dividend taxes, to do a wealth tax on the super rich, for example. They don't do any of that stuff. In fact, Rachel Reeves has explicitly said that she won't do that when speaking with other economists and speaking with business leaders, because she fundamentally serves their interests and not working people's interests. Because again, this is a fundamental distinction between the division of labour, right? These are people with diverging class interests, and you cannot, if you support one, you by default do not support the other, right? That's fundamentally against the principles of the Labour Party. But them getting elected and winning a large majority will push this conversation back further. And by having a nominally quote-unquote left party in control of this country, who will not fix the economy through left-wing economic principles, who will not fix this country through progressive social policy, who will not fix the geopolitical state by wanting to have an internationalist view of foreign policy, of geopolitics, that will only make the country even less likely to want to support left-wing policies in the future. It is dangerous for democracy and dangerous to the left in general for red Tories to be in power, because they will make things worse, and it will be blamed on the Labour Party as a left-wing party rather than the right-wing politics espoused by Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. And when people's material conditions don't increase with a left-wing party in control, there's only one place they will turn. They're not getting the economic answers that they want from the Social Democratic Party. They're not getting any of that. So they will turn to fascism, right? They will turn to the cultural issues that's being pushed by the right wing in this country to mask the fact that none of their economic principles are anything that people believe in or that work or that will fix the economic malaise in this country. Fundamentally, on a fundamental level, there's only one place they can turn with a failed Labour Party, with a non-left-wing Labour Party. That will fundamentally fail. Now, this is why I think that fundamentally, there are two things that need to happen. First of all, the electoral system needs to change. The first thing to change is the electoral system cannot be first past the post. And that's another thing that Keir Starmer is wrong on, and he's refusing to back the membership on, is he's refusing to back electoral reform. He says he doesn't want to do electoral reform because it benefits him and the Labour right. It benefits the establishment at the top of the Labour Party, who want to shut out the left wing from all political conversations moving forward, right? Completely shut us out of the conversation, because that's what the internal purges have been, to shut left wing voices out of the conversation entirely. And the media coverage of the left wing of the Labour Party has been to shut out left wing voices entirely from the conversation, right? And well, that fundamentally will. I've missed out where I was going with this point. Yes, that's why they want to maintain their political hegemony through first past the post as a voting system, and why they won't get rid of it, because it knows that they can keep ideological control of the party. Because they fundamentally have to rely on people who are far to their left to be able to win power on economic issues, because most of the country are indeed to their left on economic issues. The vast majority of the country want to see, even conservative voters want to see, mass nationalisation of our public services and renationalising the NHS, rail, mail, water, energy, all supported by even conservative voters at this point. And that's why they support first past the post, to give them ideological and political hegemony over the main party in our country, the Labour Party, outside of the Conservative Party, because they know that first past the post keeps the duopoly in power, which means that their neoliberal brand of consensus politics is the only thing that can be espoused in the Labour Party, which means they can continue to marginalise the left out of the public discourse. Because they fundamentally view the Labour Party as a force with which they can use to facilitate their own career. They fundamentally believe that by having the Labour Party to be the only nominally left-wing institution as a way to gain political power, they can use it as a springboard for their own career. This is why people like Chuka Umunna, people like Gavin Shuker, people like Angela Smith all left the Labour Party under Change UK, because it was going to fundamentally harm their future career prospects. Where are they now? Chuka Umunna working for a bank, Gavin Shuker working for other firms with unscrupulous principles. Angela Smith literally joined the board of a water company that's pumping shit into our rivers, right? These are people who are fundamentally aligned with the bourgeois and not with the working class in this country. And they are now welcomed back into the fold of the Labour Party. And they left because they knew that a left-wing Labour Party would damage their credentials to get high-paying jobs in industry later on. Peter Oban's done really good work pointing out how this is fundamentally across the entire political spectrum of the main political parties in this country, outside of the SNP, outside of the Green Party, outside of Sinn Féin at a push, possibly even. Fundamental reason why they join these parties is for high-profile paying jobs in industry later, not because of their ideological principles at all. To get money, to make politics into a career. And that's dangerous. That flies in the face of democratic principles. It's absolutely a stain on our democracy, and it has to be fought against. And the way we fight against this is with electoral reform. How do we get electoral reform? You cannot do that by supporting the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. You cannot get electoral reform by supporting the two parties who benefit the most from keeping the electoral system the way that it is right now. So what you need to support parties that support electoral reform. You have to break the voter system by ensuring that there is no fundamental consensus politics around the main two political parties anymore, right? At the point at which, for example, ideologically, it shows that first past the post is an unworkable system. If you have party on 30%, 20%, 15, 15, 10, 9, whatever it is, like the top 5 parties, all within 15 points of each other on an electoral scale, fundamentally, the ideological principles behind first past the post get broken, and it is completely unsalvageable, which we are close to getting now that we are seeing Conservatives lose votes to Reform UK. Now is the time to strike, is when the iron is hot. And the iron is hot right now when we have mass disillusionment with our political system. We have the Conservative Party being hamstrung by a party from the right, moving them over on the Overton window, just like UKIP did, right? UKIP managed to move the Conservatives over on political issues by attacking their voter base in first past the post, by hamstringing their ability to be able to properly have an ideologically conformed right wing when it came to electoral politics. And UKIP did that. They shifted the Overton window by attacking on the electoral platform of the Conservative Party. We need to do that to the Labour Party. Right, we need to do that to the Labour Party. And now that the Conservatives are again being attacked from the right by Reform UK over Brexit, over economic policy, we can now fundamentally support parties to the left of the Labour Party to push them over on issues without worrying about the fact that it will lead to a Conservative majority government. Because the Conservatives are under the same pressure right now. This is exactly the time when we need to push the Labour Party over and need to fight for electoral reform. When our current electoral system of first past the post is at its ideological weakest. It's ideologically incredibly weak right now because of how much the vote on the right is being actually divided for the first time since UKIP were a main political force in this country, right? So we need to push Labour over. If we moved it so that Conservatives were on 30 and then the Labour Party was on 30%, and then we were, and both Reform and the Greens, or the Reform and the Liberal Democrats, Reform, Greens, Lib Dems, all on 10%, plus Scotland, making it so that it's impossible to form a majority government for any party basically in future without huge amounts of public support, the system breaks. The system fundamentally breaks. And that's one reason why I think that the left, on all counts, should back the Green Party specifically if you're on the left, right? If you're a liberal, right? If you're a liberal, a socially progressive liberal on economics, you should vote for the Liberal Democrats. If you're a right winger who believes in libertarian economics, you should vote for Reform UK. Stop backing a Conservative Party that fundamentally disagrees with you on this kind of stuff at the top of the party because you want to punish the wokes or whatever, right? If you're a right wing person, why are you voting for the Conservative Party? Vote for Reform UK. They actually back what you believe in and will get you closer to your ideological goals by backing them. You should do that, right? The reason the right wing vote Reform UK and voted UKIP in previously was to move the Conservative Party over, and they successfully did that. Now, you may say, right, after all of this, you may say, okay, brilliant, No Justice. You have all of these criticisms of the Labour Party. You say the Labour Party is bad. You want to uproot our political system, uproot our political establishment. Sure, right, okay. But what's good about the Green Party? Why the Green Party specifically? What's good about them? When, they have a history of being a party of kind of hippie types, middle class hippie types who care about the environment but don't believe in progressive economic policy, who are fundamentally represent a kind of middle class demographic. Those are all criticisms that I have of the Green Party as well. Optically, I have those criticisms, and they've had lots of problems with transphobia to the point at which Scottish Greens split away from the Party of England and Wales. But we have new leaders of the Green Party. We have new people at the top of the Green Party at the time. Now, Carla Denyer, Adrian Ramsey, both pro-trans. They're both pro-trans people. The only party quite frankly, in Westminster outside of the SNP who have someone explicitly pro-trans at the head of the party. Because Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, they don't believe in it. Ed Davey is silent about it. Carla Denyer, explicitly pro-trans. Their economic policies are really good. They are the left-wing policies, the pro-union, pro-nationalisation, pro-wealth tax policies that anybody on the left should be supporting. The basic premises that any left-wing party should be supporting. Listen to this clip from LBC with the Green Party deputy leader explaining their wealth tax. Let's have a look.
Zach, Craig was in Liz Truss's government and he's learned the wrong lessons here. Borrowing is not a bad thing if you are using it to fund investment, particularly green investment. Borrowing is a bad thing if you're using it to fund unfunded tax cuts. What we really need here is a wealth tax, a 1% tax on the richest 1%. That's for start. There's lots of other things I'd like to do, but the University of Greenwich have shown that if you do a 1% tax on the 1%, the Green Party wealth tax, that would raise £75 billion a year.
Oh, that's if they stay.
Well,
that's if the wealthy stay.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that too, Craig, because also you put a tax on people who leave, and that's also if 50% of people left, which is overestimating it. So it's clear that there is money left, and we saw that, as you've just presupposed, with your question. We saw that in COVID. We saw Nightingale hospitals pop up everywhere, and that was good. We saw universal credit uplifted by £20. That was good. Those were political choices, and I'll applaud a political choice when it's the right political choice. Right now, we have political choices that are toxic, that are divisive, that are turning people against each other. We hear as if the workers is some amorphous blob that we don't understand. We're all the workers. The public are the workers. And it's really important that every single person in this country stands by these people who are striking. Because we know in the Green Party, unlike the other parties, unfortunately, and I do include Labour in this, that when people ask for solidarity, the only authentic response is to give it.
This is the basic positions every left-wing party should hold, right? Like, when was the last time you heard any rhetoric like that from anybody in the Labour Party outside of the Socialist Campaign Group? Nowhere. It's nowhere to be seen. It's nowhere to be seen. They're stuck talking about being tough on crime, which, you know, I don't mind them ceding to tough on crime rhetoric to win over authoritarian-style voters, whatever. I don't mind them talking about that, but they're too busy talking about that to talk about the basic issues of the economic state of this country and of the working class in this country. It's only the Green Party are saying these things. This is the basic. This should be level 0 as far as left-wing policy prescriptions are concerned, as far as left-wing messaging is concerned, as far as left-wing optics is concerned. And the only way you're going to get the Labour Party to support this in its current form, given that the leadership have hamstrung the entire democratic process internally within the Labour Party to benefit only the right wing of the party. They've basically gerrymandered the internal democratic way the party functions to protect the PLP against the wishes of the membership, against the policies of the membership support, right? The only way to get the current leadership of the party to switch to this, to change messaging to this, is by refusing to vote for them or voting for the Green Party instead. The Conservatives, after what they did to the economy, they're not winning the next election. But what you can do is you can use your vote in such a way to ensure that, A, there is a case for electoral reform, B, that if the Labour Party wants your vote, they have to back nominally left-wing economic policies, and C, that if there is a hung parliament, with the Labour Party in the prime position to form a coalition government, that the left-wing progressive parties like the Green Party and the SNP are the people who they have to negotiate with, and the negotiations are entirely based upon electoral reform being the main part of the coalition agreement, and the left-wing policy that these people do support being part of that. Because if you continue to support the Labour Party, this country will turn fascist. I'm sorry, it just will. The Labour Party will fail in its current form at fixing our country. They will fail miserably, and there'll be nowhere else left for people to go. They will turn to fascism, and we will be put. And the fight for the left wing will be pushed back another decade, for example, a decade at the very least. At the very least, it'll be pushed back a decade, unless you force the Labour Party to move over on these issues now. It has to move over now, not later, not after we've got the Tories out, now. And the only way you can do that is by voting for the Green Party. This is not an accelerationist position, right? I'm going to make it very, very clear. This is not an accelerationist position that I am advocating here. I'm not saying that we should vote for left-wing parties to deliberately crash the country so people get so angry they support communism or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. This is not an accelerationist position. This is a position entirely based upon utility. Because tactically voting to oust a Conservative MP and replace it with a right-wing Labour MP does nothing. It does nothing. It fundamentally does nothing.